Good morning, everybody. We've got a lot of people reaching out to us at the Wildrose Independence Party of Alberta asking where do we stand on these convoys. It's absolutely no secret where we stand on these convoys. If you're following any of our social media pages or if you get our newsletters, we're very straightforward about all of that. But figured it's probably best to hear right directly from our leader exactly where we are in all of this, where our support lies, where our hearts lie with the people of Alberta and across Canada for that matter. So, Paul, why don't you fill us in? What's going on in your world? Who are you hearing from? What are your thoughts
Well,
on all of this?
wow, Kathy, we're definitely in the middle of a crisis. Thanks so much again for taking the time this morning to discuss this problem. But what we're in is a constitutional crisis, and where do we stand? We stand with the Constitution. We stand with the people, and that stands for freedom. It stands for protecting our lives. It stands for protecting our jobs. Stands for protecting our mobility rights. It stands for protecting the security of the body. Those are where we need and must stand if we're going to overcome this crisis. But this ongoing pandemic, where we have our leaders talking about this COVID crisis, this climate crisis, when what it is, it's a constitutional crisis. It's a crisis of loss of freedom and the impact on people's lives. You know, a pandemic used to be over 10% of the people being affected. That's what these mandates, that these orders, these authoritarian dictates are having an impact on Canadians across this country. And most exciting, though, is the fact that we always need to stand up and protect ourselves and fight against the bullies. But it's when the people around stand up for us that is so critical, and where these monumental shifts take place to where is this battle for freedom going to succeed? Or is Trudeau and Kenney going to succeed in squashing these movements again? And it's precarious down on the Coutts border. Premier Kenney has not called the police off. And this idea when people they've lost their livelihoods, they've lost their income, they've lost their sense of worth in many ways with what Premier Kenney has mandated following Prime Minister Trudeau. You know, these truckers, they make their living, and for 2 years they were willing to go down back and forth long before the vaccine came in effect. And now all of a sudden, just like the attack on our frontline nurses and doctors, and now on the truckers, that they just continue, just like a disease, move from one phase to the next to overcome and derail our free society. And it's wrong. And it's just exciting to see the people standing up for these truckers, the GoFundMe money that's been sent in to help these individuals. There are soldiers that are fighting for our freedom today, and we need to remember them, and we need to keep standing with them. And again, as you said earlier, the plea that they need is they need the help during the night. That's when the police like to do their antics and to move in and to scare, and they need the people to keep coming down, and the people have been supportive of them, and we need to support them, because this is the battle for freedom that's so critical. And you need to ask yourself, you know, do we have a constitutional monarchy, or is this just a monarchy where we're nothing more than the subjects of the crown? Because that's the way they're treating. And I'm just disgusted with Premier Kenney and his antics and what he's saying on the news about the mistrust down there with the truckers. It's the other way around. That the Premier has not even sent any negotiators down. You don't send down the police to negotiate on these issues. It should be the Premier himself. And I'm going to say again, I tweeted out the other day, the hypocrisy that he wants these individuals to be able to come through and not have a 14-day quarantine, but yet these same individuals don't have a right to come into our cafes and our restaurants and to be normal citizens. But he wants that, just that enough so that he's not in trouble, that our shelves aren't empty. And the hypocrisy is just too much. People are fed up. They're seeing through it and saying, no, we're standing on the side of freedom. And that's where the Wildrose has always been. From day one, this is about freedom. Freedom from tyranny, freedom from Ottawa, and freedom from a provincial government that has failed to stand up. They've betrayed us, and they continue to betray us. But that's my first initial thoughts, Kathy.
Yeah. Well, and Paul, you've been talking to people that are in Coutts. You've been reaching out, chatting with them several times a day. What are they saying to you?
Well, first of all and foremost, I guess yesterday was my biggest concern, and it is a large contingency of people, and it's spread out over a mile. I'm very familiar with that border. I've been a long haul trucker before, and stepped down from that to run here in politics. And I went through that Coutts border 2-3 times a week sometimes, hauling down to the States. And so it traditionally has and could back up just because of the volume, but it's spread out, like I say, over a mile. And so who knows what's going on? But the bottom line, that there was police vehicles that were rammed isn't true, that there was confrontations isn't true. And I don't know whether the premier just flats out loved to sensationalize to get, the people on his side, or whether he's being fed misinformation, but heads need to roll for that. This idea of causing the excitement and the threats that they're going in there and going to arrest these people, I'm very disturbed about the way he's handling it. He himself should be down there. For him to say, "Oh, I'm not going to cross the police lines," that there shouldn't be any police lines. They let all those truckers go with the promise that they would let their protesters come in and they didn't. They've blocked them out. They've blocked them out for food. They've done everything to try and demonize and choke these individuals off. And that's not been what I would call in good faith. That the government and the police are using strong arm tactics, and there's no negotiations. And again, what's most upsetting, Kathy, is this is such a simple solution. End the mandates. That's all they got to do. Boris Johnson caved. Ireland is. Premier Scott Moe now says, "Oh, we're going to do it at the end." Why at the end of the month? It should have been yesterday. It should have been a month ago. It should have been 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they failed to do it. And what they're trying to hang on to, I don't know. This lust for power and control. And whenever you try to control someone else's life, and it doesn't matter in what setting, whether it's in business, whether it's in your family, but when you try to control other people's lives, it always ends badly. It's not in the best interest. We need to have that freedom of choice, that freedom to decide who and what we're going to be. And this has been stripped away from so many. And they fail to recognize the impact on other individuals. I've met 3 mothers that lost their sons to suicide during this pandemic. That's never mentioned. I talked to an individual working in the Lethbridge Hospital this week, and the suicide rate is alarming. She said that she's never seen it this bad. It's not in the news. And probably the other thing that's most disturbing, and I don't know throughout the province, but many hospitals have floors that have never been opened. And the real problem in all of this, and the premier again saying, "Well, we just got to protect our healthcare system." Everything that they have done has been to undermine and destroy our healthcare system. Traditionally, whenever there's been a pandemic or a crisis like this, the nurses and the doctors that become sick, they actually stay and live in the wards and continue protecting and helping those people that are sick. But here, what have they done? "Oh, you've been exposed. You go home for 14 days. Oh, they've done everything to undermine it, nothing to add security and growth and size to our healthcare system. They never did anything to train the nurses, more nurses for ICU, more respiratory therapists, all of those things were failed. And yet we spent billions of dollars to show for what? And the other thing that upsets me is all of this testing. What is the purpose of the testing? If they wanted to do anything, the first thing they should have been doing was giving, before the vaccines were even out, giving those nurses and frontline workers the ability for an antibody test to see if, in fact, they had natural immunity. They could have and should have done that to give people security. Said, "Well, no, I've actually been exposed and I have the natural immunity." And all of these things, Kathy, are thrown to the side so that they can instill fear, so that they can control the masses. And for what purpose? It certainly isn't for the good for the individual or anything else. And again, this idea of the tyranny of the majority and the segregation that's going on, and the accusations that, oh, it's only the unvaxxed that are the vectors. It's not true. We absolutely know that whether you're vaxxed or unvaxxed, you are able to carry and spread corona. It's just very disturbing where we're at. And this freedom convoys, these rallies, we just need to succeed. We need to crush this dictatorship that's ruining people's lives and causing so much pain, not to even mention the economics of it, that's going to have a long-term ripple effect. And again, you see these speech therapists that say how much the children are suffering from this, wearing masks and needing to have therapy now. for their speech because they're not developing it properly. That's going to have lifelong implications. There's just so many, as Ralph Klein always says, it's the, now I've forgotten how he even said it, but it's the unseen consequences that happen.
Yeah.
And they're just, it's going to be a tsunami of problems, that the mental health problems, the economic problems, the loss of jobs, the loss of businesses, the list goes on and on and on. And the bottom line is that these mandates are far more damaging than the virus ever was or will be. And the worst of it all is if we actually do have a pandemic now, we don't even have a clue on actually how to handle one because of what we've done with this one and throwing all of the planning. Lieutenant Colonel Redmond has talked so much on this, on what we do in a crisis, and all of that's been thrown out. And can we retrain, or are people so paranoid and scared now that we can't function properly?
Yeah. Well, and there's even you talk about if there was another pandemic or whatever. The other day, some of us, I hope all of us, had an Amber Alert go off on our phones because there was a little one that was in trouble in Calgary, right? So all of Alberta got it. And you know what my first reaction was? Oh, I'm not even going to look at that. Here we go again with Kenny doing another Amber Alert for something. And then I thought, no, you know what? Maybe it's real. Maybe I better look. And I'm glad that I did. I mean, I was in northern Alberta, so there's nothing I could have done for Calgary. But that's the damage that's being done. Is you're crying wolf, and it's like, well, how do we believe you? You're supposed to be our leaders, and this is what you're doing. And now we see a whole bunch of politicians, both federally and provincially, within the both conservative parties, coming out of the woodwork going, oh yeah, we're there for you. We're there for you. It's like, really?
Yeah,
Where have you been?
this is like the ambulance drivers that are driving around running over pedestrians and saying, "Oh, it's so lucky we're here to save you." It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
it
and
really
again,
is.
that childhood story of never cry wolf, because when we need it, are we going to be there? And they've been crying wolf now for 2 years. The people are numb, and it's very disturbing where we are and where and how we're going to get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know as we bring this to a close, we don't want to take up too much of people's
No,
time. They've got a fight to get into. But I just want to remind every Albertan that Paul Hinman, the leader of the Wildrose Independence Party of Alberta, has been the only leader of any political party who has stood against this right from the beginning and stood for Albertans right from the beginning. And some people have gone to really, really great lengths to silence him so that you don't know that. So help us get this word out. Share this video with everybody you know. If you want to get in contact with Paul Hinman, ask him some questions, reach out. Let us know. We're happy to make that happen, particularly if you live in Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche. There's some really big, exciting things going on there. We'll get back to talking about that next week. But right now, we just really, really want to make sure that our truckers, our people, Albertans know we're here for you guys. Reach out. Let us know how we can help you. And we're more than happy to do so.
Yep. This is our fight for our freedom. And again, go to our webpage, www.wildrosenation.com. You can reach out to us. But thanks, Kathy. And this battle will continue. And it's exciting being up here in Fort McMurray. The people realize that they need a change. We just need to, as you say, we need to get out, and they need to realize there is another opportunity. There is another choice. And so please help us out. If you have friends up here, call them and say, check out the Wildrose. They're our future.
Exactly. Awesome. All right, Paul. Well, you have fun on that trail, knocking on doors and getting to know more people up there. And we'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, Kathy. Take care.
Take care.